Welcome. As you know, we're all gathered here today because it's the 4th annual Alan Sisley Memorial Oration. And a very brief recap. Alan was the long-time director of Orange Regional Art Gallery. And after his death, the Friends of the Gallery decided that having a talk which hopefully challenges our perceptions, makes us think a little bit more about how art and life coexist, whatever that form of art is. We decided, because that's the way Alan was, always questioning, always wanting to find out more, that inviting a speaker who had a story to tell, an experience to relate, opinions to voice, would be a good way to remember him. So tonight we're really delighted to have with us Julie McCrossin. Some of you may remember her from way back in her comedy days on Good News Week. You may remember her from Life Matters on Radio National. You may have seen her advertised as emceeing various events. She's an ambassador for innumerable, well, 3 or 4 at least, organisations, particularly those associated with cancer. She is a person who likes people, and people like Julie. So the talking is always good. And I hope that those of you who are here will feel very happy to respond if Julie asks you a question or for your opinion when we get to the Q&A. So without further ado, would you all please welcome Julie McCrossin.
Thank you very much, and I promise you that questions or comments are voluntary. Look, I'm thrilled to be asked to come and speak. If I could ask my learned friend to click. This is the age, I already knew Al. This is me on my first day at school. I'm going to Kambala Prep, an Anglican girls' school in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, and back then they had a prep in a beautiful home on the harbour. I used to be ashamed of being from Vaucluse because my politics has tended to be progressive, but I have had cancer, and now I think I just should be frank. I did have a life of privilege, and it introduced me to a very rich cultural life, and I'm grateful to my Mum and Dad, who came back from the Second World War, got an education and worked very hard to give us a great go. And any parents and grandparents amongst you will know. Oh, no, sorry, I moved my arm inappropriately. I'll be more distinctive, David, thank you. But I already knew Alan and his brother Michael and his mum Lynette, who unfortunately was unable to come this evening. And I remember how much I wanted to cross the road to get to the house because I loved their house, and I loved Alan. And so it's a very personal thing to be asked to come here tonight. He's a man I really feel good about. I'm meant to be in the film, so I should probably get a little bit closer. Now, I want to say hello to Caro, who I think of as Alan's wife. Why not say that? He's in the room with us. And I want to welcome Henry, one of Alan's sons. So just come straight up, Henry. We've got to bring your dad into the room. I went to your father's funeral at St Mark's in Vaucluse, and in fact, that was one of the last times I saw him. We sang hymns around a piano in the church hall. So you can see, we were just evil, the pair of us, right from the word go. But no, seriously, I had just been at the end of my treatment for head and neck cancer, and he was just at the beginning. And partly what I'll be talking about tonight is how the arts have helped me and are still helping me to cope and recover. And that extraordinary fact that one of us lived and one of us didn't, and that randomness of life. What can you say? It's beyond words. So I'm going to talk about hope, and I'm going to talk about the life force, and I'm going to talk about expressing the inexpressible. They're the 3 things that I'm going to, because that's what I've tried to get from the arts, including the visual arts. What happened on the grass outside your dad's funeral?
There was Morris dancing.
What is Morris dancing?
It's a traditional English dance, and the style that we do is from the Cotswolds.
The style that we do. And so you're your father, who I think of as one of life's true convivial, fun, foolish, idiosyncratic. This is the man, isn't it? Hand up if you knew Alan Sisley. So quite a lot of you, would you agree? Just a fabulous man, a man who put a grin on your face and who marvellously has taken the visual arts into your local health service, and I know many others were involved in that. But you have taken up an extremely idiosyncratic activity. Is it for your dad, or is it just because you were like him, a little nerdy, a little odd?
I think more that I was like him, yes.
Now, has anyone got a hanky in an audience like this? Surely some of the women have got a hanky in their handbag. I need 2 real handkerchiefs. I'll accept a gentleman's handkerchief. Come on, Orange, you're not all tissue people, are you? Oh, there's one. Great. Thank you, I'm coming. This is perfect, and I'm just going to run to the back. I have got arthritis, but as you know, move it or lose it. Thank you very much. And we will return the hankies. I've got to stick to time. Lynn is going to ring a bell at 30 minutes. I'll stop at 40 and it'll all be over in an hour. Ladies and gentlemen, the DNA of Alan Sisley has offered... Step forward, sir, so you're captured in film. Would you please, a warm round of applause for just a fragment, just a moment, of the glory of Morris dancing. Go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on. I want to set the scene. So I'm here to talk about health and the arts. And I'm going to share with you, I'm a little bit emotional after that, but anyway, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what happened to me and then how the arts have helped. I'm aware that there's quite a few people in this room who've been affected by cancer, but you've just got to bat on and you've got to talk about things. So this is me having chemo. Essentially, I'm plugged in and I'm right at the beginning of my journey. I lost 20 kilograms in 6 weeks. So I, like Alan, had a head and neck cancer. I had a persistent sore throat, but I wasn't sick. And it turned out I had cancer at it's called oropharyngeal, the back of my tongue, the side of my throat, and my tonsils. And my treatment was radiation every day for 30 days to the head and neck area, and chemotherapy once a week. And it was stage 4, and as I said to the doctor, how many stages are there? And he explained that there were 4. I began to sense that this was perhaps a serious matter. And this is me, as I say, early on, smiling at my partner. A gay marriage, this is 2013, so I'm just at 5 years now. And I had always thought I'd wait to marry my partner, Melissa, who we'd been together for 22 years, until there was same-sex marriage in Australia. And literally sitting in that chair, I thought, well, it's the truth. Might not be here in time because, you know, we had the Catholics with Gillard in the unions, and then we had Abbott, who was a Catholic. And things weren't looking good on. And I fled the Sydney Anglicans and I go to a Uniting Church. And I didn't actually flee them. They more locked me out of the door. So I said, if I get through this, we'll go to New York and marry, and we did. So that's a happy story. And we've subsequently had anyway, I won't go into all of that. Let's have a look at the next one. The thing about head and neck cancer, I didn't have surgery, as Alan did, and sadly didn't survive it. I had radiation and chemo because if I'd had surgery, I wouldn't have been able to speak or swallow again. And I'm now quite active for people with head and neck cancer, and quite a lot of people can't speak or swallow, and they get absolutely on with their lives. And I remember distinctly that when the doctor told me I had cancer, the first thing I said was, don't you need to do a biopsy? Both my brothers are doctors, I knew something. And he said, yeah, I'll do a biopsy, but this is my bread and butter, you've got it. And I said, well, look, you know, keep me alive. My elderly mum needs me, and my partner's parents had died 6 weeks before, both of them. And I just couldn't bear the thought of putting them both through this. Anyway, he said he'd do his best. And then the next thing I said, I don't even know where it came from, I said, if you have to take my voice, take it. Because I was a radio broadcaster and I was scared they might hesitate to go the ton on me, and I wanted to live. This extraordinary desire to live surged out of me. And he said, "That's good to know." And that's when I knew I was in really bad trouble. Anyway, I'm not going to show you grim images. I don't want to tell you anymore. I'm alive and Alan's not alive. Bugger. What do you say, Cara? What I want to focus in on is what helped me. But what you need to know, Dave, if you could whack on, this is me in a radiation machine, and these are lovely women who are assisting me. They make it to fit you. This is, in fact, my mask. And you're clicked down by the head and restrained by the head. It's a safety mask, because if they're firing radiation into the head and throat, they don't want to hit the spine, they don't want to hit the brain. It's a safety mask. I had never seen anything like that in my life, and I didn't know until I was clicked down for the first time like that what was going to happen. And it was 20 minutes alone in the room. I had a traumatic and devastating experience. And I promised myself that if I survived, I would dedicate my time to trying to get more information out into the public, and also partner with doctors and other clinicians to improve the way we prepare radiation patients, particularly head and neck cancer patients, for this experience, so we don't get a shock. So that's just it in a nutshell. So this is actually, I'm recovered, and the reason I know that is I became quite skeletal, and obviously I sadly put all that 20 kilograms and a bit more back on. So this is me making educational films to show patients and families before it happens. But I just wanted to, I believe with these masks, you have to see it to believe it. This one, the photo you can't quite see, I don't know this lady, but she's lying on her back and she's got her thumbs up. And when I saw it, I pursued the story. Why would she do it? And it turns out her teenage son, who'd been driving her to treatment, wanted to know what happened in that bunker, because you go into a lead-lined bunker. And he went in, and of course he was so frightened to see his mother like that. And so she's got thumbs up. She's reassuring her son. "It's okay, darling, I'm okay." Because it's on so tight. It's like that, right? And I just found that so moving. I just love mothers. You know, that when you're in such a sticky corner, you still got your regard. And by the way, I am not critical of radiation. I'm a patron of a group called Targeting Cancer that is all about getting access to radiation for people who need it, because many Australians could benefit from it and they don't get it. So just so I'm absolutely clear, I can speak and I can swallow, and I'm not scarred. And I wouldn't be like that if I'd had the surgery. So my surgeon did the right thing. He referred me to radiation. But that doesn't mean I can't do something about this traumatic experience. And I think many clinicians are afraid to tell you about it because they're scared we won't comply with treatment, to use the language. You know, that if we realise what we're in for, we might not front. So anyway, I want to talk about art. This is a mask. At Liverpool Hospital, they've had 3 Bravery Unmasked exhibitions. They run workshops all year where patients or family members of head and neck cancer patients who've had radiation, and some staff members who are also dealing with this, and you know, they deal with the stress of it all too, decorate their masks. And at the Kazula Powerhouse Museum, I don't know if some of you are aware, it's out Liverpool way, I've emceed and launched several of these exhibits. Just for time reasons, I'm not going to show you too many. This was made by the wife of a man while he was in treatment. Because at the end of it they say, "Do you want your mask?" I said, "Are you mad?" I regretted that later, and I actually had another one made and was filmed, and that film is now available for patients as education, so you can learn about it. So that's actually not the one I wore during treatment, but it was exactly the same. So they gave her one that someone hadn't wanted to keep, and she gave it to her husband in his room as like, "You're a warrior, man. You will make it." And I found that a very moving thing. And this, thanks for laughing. Here it is. This, as you can imagine, when you launch things, do I buy one? Well, I bought that because, you know, I said I want to talk about joy, the life force, and the inexpressible. It is inexpressible. I'm trying to tell you what it was like, but you don't really know, do you? What's it like to have a life-threatening diagnosis, be put into a bunker and screwed down by the head and left alone for 20 minutes? You know, that's not something you can really convey. And I saw that, and I thought, God, I love the visual arts. All that is a bit of gaffer tape and a couple of ping pong balls. And my partner, I have to hide it under my desk in my office because she thinks I'm mad. She wants to leave cancer behind, not talk about it. But I love it, so I've bought that and I hide it in my house. And the other one I bought was this one, and this is the actual mask. So there are, depending on where your cancer is, mine is bigger because I had it in my lymph nodes. That's why it was stage 4. It had metastasised. But this gentleman didn't. And so that's an Aboriginal man has painted that. And I actually think that's pretty good. So I bought that more as art, but needless to say, I will never be allowed to hang it on any wall that my partner, Melissa, can see. And again, you can't see the top, but this is Bravery Unmasked. And some of them are absolutely magnificent. It started in the United States and now it's spread to the United Kingdom. And it's just one of the ways, I guess, post-treatment, you can try and transform the trauma, deal with the trauma. Am I making sense, guys? I like to show, not rabbit on too much. Thank you. Now, I'm moving now because I don't want to use art to recover from trauma. I want to prevent trauma. And I've emceed and done interviews for many, many years, right, at conferences of all kinds. And I think paediatrics is fantastic. And why, when we turn 18, do they stop being so empathic and creative and innovative and fun? So I'm mad for social media, Twitter and Facebook and so on. And I saw some work coming out of a cancer centre in Leeds in the United Kingdom that thrilled me. It was for children. So I went to Leeds. I contacted them from Sydney. I said, hi, I'm a head and neck cancer patient. I'm still alive. And you're doing great stuff. Can I come and visit you? And they treated me like I was a member of the royal family. They met me at the station. They took me up. And I spent a whole day at this magnificent hospital. And there's these 2 women, and are hopeless with name. One girl's name is Lobka, and I've now, of course, forgotten the other girl's name. But anyway, one is a radiation therapist, so they're the people that manage the radiation treatment, which is a highly skilled and dangerous job. And the other is a play therapist, and they work in the paediatric section. And I'm just going to share with you a few of the things. But have we got any people from the health system here? Anyone working in health? Okay. Fantastic. Well, welcome, and it's lovely to have you here. So I want a play person for the adults. If Alan and I would have liked some play, wouldn't we? What? Definitely. So I've got to watch the time, so I'll go into it. They call this magic string, right? I don't want to share too much of the cancer story, so I won't go into my own experience. I'll simply talk about the positive things they're doing. So with children, at least they could explain to me, you've got to stay in the mask, okay? If you don't accept this treatment, it's surgery and you'll lose your voice and swallowing. You've got to stay in the mask. So I suffered, I'm going to tell you, but I stayed in the mask. But you can't say that to a 3-year-old, can you? A 4-year-old. So the challenge is, how many general anaesthetics or deep sedation do you give to a child if they need to have 30 sessions, because 30 is the common thing? Well, that's very cognitively potentially dangerous. So these 2 women have become incredibly innovative, and they call this magic string. And essentially, the child, they do lots of things, this is just one, but you're lying there, you're pinned down by the head, and you've got hold of one end of the magic string, and it goes out the bunker, it goes under the door, and it goes out, and mum or dad or a good friend is on the other end of the magic string, and you can pull. Well, I was never alone. I could have had my partner or a mate, and I would have been able to, can you imagine how that psychologically would help? Don't you reckon? I was about, how old? I'm nearly 64, and this is 5 years ago. So I was about 58. I wanted magic string. I have the next one. The other thing is, if you see this, so patient education I'm getting to now, innovative patient education, fun patient education. If you see that first image of me down by the head with those ladies in uniforms, it still looks a bit scary. I still would have preferred to have seen it, because at least I would have known what was about to happen. But I've started to see on the internet that some people had built Lego models of LINACs. LINACs is the acronym for a radiation machine. Linear accelerators, they're called. It's basically a form of intense X-rays that kills the cancer. And so this, I on Twitter. I've been building up a cancer-related Twitter following. Anyone on Twitter? Yeah, great. So you know, it's fantastic. So I've built up 6,500 followers now. I'm extremely active. 98% of them are working in cancer centres all over the world. So I'm communicating constantly and swapping great ideas. And so me and the chief medical physicists, so they're the people who purchase and maintain these incredibly expensive multi-million-dollar bits of technology. And this wonderful man called Dr. Sean Gearhagen is the medical physicist of the ACT. And we're both on the spectrum, you know what I mean? I like to think I'm pretty good at eye contact, he's less so. But he and I ran an internet-based model competition. Now, for time reasons, have a look, have I got another one? Yes. Well, of course, nerds across the world started posting pictures of Linux. So you see, that is an exact model of a radiation machine. And one of the major manufacturers of the Linux, of these machines, thought it was such a good idea. They ran a competition within their company, and me and Sean judged them, and we had a winner and 3 runners-up, and we gave them out at the major conference in Canberra of the radiation therapists, and then they wanted certificates. Well, of course, it was all just a joke I'd made up in my bed in Annandale. And so I've got an assistant who helps me, and so we created these certificates, and I got permission from one of the charities I work with, which is a collection of radiation therapists, to put their logo on it for these. But you see, that's how they introduce children to the idea. They build them. They've got the magic string. You see, they're thinking, how can we prepare kids so they're not panic-stricken? And these are called beads of courage. So they've got different beads. I'll just show you one more. And for every procedure, whether it's an MRI or a CAT scan or putting in a cannula, you know what I mean by that? We're probably all of an age where we know, oh, bloody hell. How did it happen to me anyway? I'll never forget, I was diagnosed, right? You remember that guy who said, I'll do a biopsy, Jewel, but trust me, you've got cancer. He sent me immediately for a test. This is an anecdote I have to share with you. So it would have been about 30 minutes later. Well, I was at St Vincent's in Sydney, and I'm grateful they're so quick. I lie down on a machine. I actually don't know what it was. And the nurse said to me, what's your good vein? Well, because I'd never been asked that question in my life. And I said, I've got no idea. And she said, how long have you had cancer? I said, about 30 minutes. And to her eternal credit, she stopped the process, gave me eye contact and said, so sorry, and she found a vein. But anyway, I'll never forget that, the girl who'd had cancer for 30 minutes, not yet confirmed. But anyway, so they've got a different bead for everything, and the kids love them. When we were younger, and even now, you'd love a charm bracelet. What a simple idea. So we'll just have a look. Now, this is where she's just superb. So this is her, and this is getting massive coverage in the BBC at the moment and in Europe, and she's being invited to all these European conferences. And I like to think I'm responsible because I tweeted pictures of her work. Because I remember I went to Leeds, I took about 50 pictures on my iPhone and went insane on Facebook and Twitter. And so we are now in daily contact, sharing ideas. So she talks to the children about who is your superhero, who makes you feel big and strong. And then she works with them on the painting of the mask. You can see it's another mask. And then she asks the parents, can they buy a relevant costume? And so they then, and there's all these wonderful photos of them walking into the machine. And can you see? And they're saving them from the need for sedation. And this is Lobka. She's a mother of 3, your 3 small children, and she's just got empathy. She's just got it. What am I promoting here? I'm actually promoting innovation. This isn't great art. You've come here, you probably thought I was going to show you big art. I've got a bit of big art in a sec. But this is deep empathy with patients and not worrying about how we normally do things and innovating. And I'm trying to promote that. This is the best. If get on Twitter and then you can see I took pictures of this. This is a 6:1 scale model of their actual LINAC at Leeds Hospital, at their cancer centre, and the kids can press buttons and it does exactly what the real radiation machine is going to do when they're in the room, and you can put Barbie on and see how Barbie's got a tiny mask. Oh! And they have masks for teddy bears, so the children are totally familiar with the mask, okay, before they ever get the bloody thing popped on their head. Maybe they just pop me in and click me down. What are they doing? And by the way, I know those people. I'm not bad-mouthing people. I have become a working colleague with the staff who treated me, and they have helped me make videos, booklets, all manner of things. If you have an interest in head and neck cancer, and I don't expect more than one of you in the room to do so, this is the Cancer Council booklet, Understanding Head and Neck Cancer, and my story is in that. After great lobbying, I've now got a picture of a LINAC and someone in a mask in it. That took me several years, because this is what every cancer patient gets. Why didn't they want to show it? I think they were scared they'd worry people, that it looks frightening, but you can't wait till the person's in there, is my view. And then this is a book that I co-edited of patient and clinical stories, and we're doing another one at the moment, but only if you have an interest in head and neck cancer. And of course, if you could go on to the next one, I haven't got it, but they've got Ken as well, for prostate and all the rest. And I with my man Sean, remember the chief medical physicist of the ACT, we are working together, and I think we're going to pull it off. I want a scale-accurate model of a radiation machine on the desk of every radiation oncologist in Australia. You've got to think big, okay? And he is working with me because he is one of the people who advise the health departments which big machine to get, and they're worth millions. So the manufacturers of those big machines like medical physicists. Are you with me, peeps? And he's getting them to sponsor the creation of 3D printing kits. We've got 3D printing is exploding in medicine. If I ever got necrosis of the jaw, let's hope I don't, but it does sometimes, that's like death of bone if you've had a lot of radiation, if you live a long time. Right now they put in metal, false jaws. Well, if I got it now in Sydney, I would have a 3D printed jaw. It's not very pleasant head and neck cancer, but anyway, that's what it would be. Well, he is working on having little kits that will be the exact 3D printed model of the LINAC in the hospital. They will print it, and it'll be the size to fit a Barbie or a Ken, and it will be in every hospital. And he will mail it to all the other men and women on the Asperger's spectrum who are medical physicists who would love models. I'm not being disrespectful. Can you see that could work, guys? Come back to me. So, a lot of that was about, I guess, what Freud would call creative sublimation. You've got trauma and you're trying to either prevent it or deal with it. Dealing with it is the adults decorating after the treatment, and the before work with children is trying to prevent the trauma in the first place, or at least keep it to a minimum. The other thing that is happening a lot in hospitals, and I don't know if it's happening here, is, particularly in cancer centres, is bringing life into the centre. So if you go to Kinghorn Cancer Centre, where I had my chemo in Sydney, or if you go to the Chris O'Brien Lifehouse, which is at opposite Royal Prince Alfred in Sydney, a big cancer place, you walk in, you wouldn't know it was a hospital. In fact, when I had my first treatment and I had to for chemotherapy, I arrived and had an appointment, and there was so much natural wood and natural light and beauty that when a woman called me into the room, I said, "What is this place?" She looked at me. I was obviously a little under shock, and she put her little down and she turned around and said, "This is a hospital and we're going to look after you." Well, I had no idea it was a hospital, but I realised it was a hospital when I went to the toilet, because beside it was one of those red buttons and it said emergency button. And I'm sitting there and I thought, that's because my mother has had a lot of illness and I've gone to hospital with her many times. I looked, that's funny, that's what is in the toilets when mum's in hospital. And then like a huge penny went clunk, and I realised I was in a clinical setting. Does anyone know what I'm referring to here? Yeah. So if you're really unwell and a bit muddled, you don't necessarily know you're in a hospital. So this is the foyer of the cancer centre at Leeds. And they have really not too expensive fresh farmers markets. So when you enter, we'll just do another one, Please, David. They have art exhibited, and I'm celebrating here the wonderful work that Alan and I've tried to capture people, Dr. Bernie Huxtable and Dr. Peter Belinkie from the Orange Health Service were incredibly supportive of the idea of art going into the health community. Brenda Gray, Brad Hammond, the current director in an earlier role, Meg Simpson, now retired, and others have got this fantastic thing going where you've got good quality art cropping up all over the hospital, including the mental health services. You've had artists in residence and so on. Well, this is absolutely fantastic. And so this again is the foyer of the Leeds Cancer Centre. And this is also the foyer where there's often live music. If you go to the Chris O'Brien Lifehouse, local schools have a roster of choirs. They always have an artist in residence working downstairs. And most thrilling of all, they've got a fantastic cafe with genuinely good coffee. And it's nice, it's big, and the staff, the families and the patients want to be there. And so people mingle together. So when I was really ill, I'm just watching my time, but I think I'm going okay. When I was really ill, it's like I'd lost the life force. When people visited me, I was too unwell to speak, but the mere presence of people who had the life force, it was almost like I needed to touch you and I could get some of it. Do you know, I don't know if any of you have ever been really sick. I was even too sick to speak, and for 8 weeks I lost speech. Thank you. So I've got 10 minutes. Great, thank you. You know, when I was really sick, I lost speech for 8 weeks, so I could only just sit there. But having people come into the room gave me the life force. And I think the more we can do this in hospitals, the better. So I will now show you a little bit of art as I close and then open for questions or comments. The last point I want to talk about is the role of the arts in expressing the inexpressible. And this is I'm not going to pretend this is a happy image. I'm showing you the positive stuff because I wouldn't want to come out in winter and hear a lot of misery. But about 2 years before I got cancer, I bought this at a charity fundraiser for an organisation for people with disabilities. To my eternal shame, I forgot to write down the name of the artist. This is an original work. And as you may gather, if you're attracted to something like this and bought it, I may have had a little bit of other trauma prior to cancer. I bought this before cancer. And I just loved it. I just thought it was dark and powerful and striking. I've done a lot of work as a facilitator and a journalist in child protection, sexual assault, and these sorts of issues, and it just spoke to me about trauma. Well, look at the neck. You know, I'm not a spooky person, it's just a coincidence. But it's a sort of a striking coincidence. Because that's exactly where my cancer was, that's where all the radiation was. And I keep that in my office because it speaks to the suffering associated with the fear of death and the fear of not being there for my mum and my partner and the 2 children that I've helped raise. And now some of you will know this, it's a really famous painting by Bruegel. I thought I should at least know the name of it. It's called Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. And they think it was done in around 1558, and it's often been described as capturing ignorance to the suffering of fellow human beings. The critical thing you need to see, so remember Icarus, his dad showed him how to make wings with beeswax and feathers, but don't go too close to the sun, it'll melt and you'll be in trouble. And like a young woman would, he flew too high, melted, and he plunged and died. And you can see in the right corner, can you see there are just 2 little legs? And that's, of course, Icarus has fallen from the sky. And everything in this interpretation of the story, everything just seems to be going on as if nothing's happened. And this painting, I went looking for this painting. I remembered it from my childhood. And the reason I did was that I've had, I don't know, there'll be other people in the room who've had cancer, I know there are. But every now and then I'll find myself sitting in the traffic and I'll think, I could not be here. Like, you could just suck the car up and everyone would just be driving on. And it just seems the most astonishing idea in the world. I am a person of faith. I'll show you one more picture and I'll come back. I've just been lucky enough to have a trip to New York. Excuse me, I'll just run over. I know I've got to finish up because I want to go to questions. But, I'm an Anglican background, love choral music, love high Anglicanism with incense and all that sort of stuff. But the church that welcomed me in Sydney when I wanted to return to my faith was not the Anglican world, it was the Uniting Church, which is very Methodist, Congregationalist, so different. But I go to South Sydney Uniting Church in Redfern and I love it. But in New York, around the corner from where we were staying, this was just a few weeks ago, was St Luke's, the Church of St Luke in the Fields. And I went to it for 3 Sundays, and it was the incredibly high church with beautiful music. And I knew I was coming to do this talk, and I thought of the wonderful choral music that Alan's mother introduced me to and that Alan loved as well. And I just adored going to this church. My partner went to Century 21 and shopped, because that's what she likes to do, and thinks I'm a bit odd, but there you go. But I really loved it. But this is one of the images. In Catholicism, they have the 12 Stations of the Cross, and it's all about crucifixion. And as a Protestant, I've always found it a bit grim. Well, these people had the Stations of the Resurrection, and they got local artists. So this is just one of them, which is actually a photograph, and it refers to the time by the Sea of Galilee where... I'll put allegedly in for those who don't have faith. Allegedly, the resurrected Jesus appeared to the disciples by the sea, and he cooked them breakfast in the morning. And as they broke bread with him, they recognised him, and he gave this message, "Feed my sheep." And this was a photograph taken by a man living with HIV. We were staying at Greenwich Village, and of another friend also living with HIV. And I just thought it was such a delicate image of male vulnerability. And just so beautiful. And there were obviously 11 other paintings. All the others were paintings. But in this little book, there's the story of each artist and each moment of appearance in resurrection. And I put this in, to be honest with you, because I thought Lynette Sisley, Alan's mum, would be here today, and she introduced me to the faith, very much so. My mother was struggling with small children in Vaucluse. A minister called Reverend Neville Bathgate visited her and involved the children and mum in the church. And it was a life-saving thing for a woman who was struggling while Dad was off earning the bacon and she was lonely and struggling. And I thought Lynette would like this story of the 12 stages of the resurrection. And I guess because in some mysterious way, I believe Alan is with us as we speak together now. But if I could just go back to Bruegel, I thought I'd just finish by reading you part of a poem by Auden, and mainly because Roz has organised me coming, and she's a literary teacher, so I thought I should bring a poem in. Can you hold that near my mouth for a second? You're a human mic stand. And I'm not going to read the whole poem because it's the sort of poem that it's too complex. So I'm just going to read the opening and then the section that refers to this. And again, if you could just notice those little legs wagging, and the world just seems to be going on. Is the world indifferent to the suffering? This is the theme of this poem. About suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters. How well they understood its human position. How it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. In Bruegel's Icarus, for instance, how everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. The ploughman may have heard the splash, the forsaken cry, but for him it was not an important failure. The sun shone as it had on the white legs disappearing into the green water, and the expensive, delicate ship that must have seen something amazing, a boy falling out of the sky, had somewhere to get to and sailed calmly on. And I can't explain it to you, but I find comfort in viewing that image of suffering of the girl and facing up to that if I'm gone, the world goes on. I always say to my partner, just don't pick up at the funeral. It's a joke. It's a joke. But, I'll just close by telling you, I was once at the Rotary fair at Wellington. We have a bit of land at Wellington, and that's where I'll go tonight. And it was only about a year after treatment, and Melissa was still, my partner was just so worried about recurrence. And I do have a faith. You know, Mrs. Sisley got to me young, and the Reverend Neville Bathgate. And I said, look, don't worry, darling. If I go, I'll always be with you. And she wailed, Caro, and she said, but it won't be the same. What do you say? Anyway, I've tried to share with you the arts. I hope that was helpful. Thank you. So I think we've got a maximum of 15. I mean, we don't have to use it all, but anyone with a question or a comment, you'd be most welcome. I'm just going to whiz up to you and hold the microphone to your mouth. I never let it go because I'm a total control freak. But also it helps them record the volume. Hi.
Thanks, Julie. That was truly wonderful. Can you let me know, we had a bit of time talking last night with some other people. To you, what is the meaning of life?
Can you share? I mean, I'm happy to have a go. You come for something like this to talk about life and death, you've got to take it on the chin. But do you have a thought on it?
I asked you the question.
Okay. Well, I'll have a go then. Oh, golly. I go back. You can only go to bedrock when you get a question like that. And I'm sorry, I'm so camera trained. I'm trying to get back into a place where that poor gentleman can catch, because I want to put it on the website. Look, I just go back to love thy neighbour. And I mean that very deeply. If I could illustrate it, and you know, don't want you to think I'm an evangelical or anything like that, not at all. But when I was having my treatment over at St Vincent's, while I was well enough, I would go after treatment and walk across the park to where I went to school, Skeggs Darlinghurst, which is just a little walk from the cross. And I would, from St Vincent's and the cross, and I would sit up the back of the old chapel that was built by the old girls, as we're called, back in 1927, and I would just sit quietly there. And I took comfort from the faith of my youth, and it was without words. There were no words involved. But what I learnt there, not just from the words, although we did have church every day and so on in that era. I went to school in the 60s, but we had teachers who really did love us and who showed that love. And I had a family that had some difficulties, and I respect their privacy, and they kept me well. I now go to a little church in Redfern, as I mentioned, and it's very near the huge flats, the public housing flats, and about half of our congregation have a serious mental illness, because to get public housing now you have to be in dreadful difficulty, and the other half are part of the regeneration of Redfern, or what's the word, the negative word, gentrification. And we all muck in together, and there is a love there, there is a caring there. And to bring it to our theme, and no one cares what you believe, and you don't have to believe. It's just a place of love and care. And the minister, who has a visual arts background, they have art classes, and they're the most hilarious mixture of people. And we call the back of the church the Orchard Gallery. You can Google it, or Google South Sydney Uniting Church, and you'll see the work. And we have regular curated openings where we have alcohol and not alcohol, because we have quite a lot of recovering alcoholics, because that's how they got into public housing. And we have launches, and we've had, and one show, people, the minister, a lovely man called Andrew Collis, began by yelling out the names of the different towers, and people cheered because it was their tower. Why do I tell you that story? Because it's the meaning of life. And when I was really sick and I couldn't speak and I couldn't swallow, because why you get so thin is you lose swallowing. So you're on sort of liquid stuff, or they feed you through a tube in your stomach, but I managed to keep getting enough down. I sat there and I couldn't speak, and I'd lost Wi-Fi to God. I didn't have some big faith thing. I just knew that was where I was safe, where they loved their neighbour in a really practical way. And I couldn't swallow the bread of communion. It was just the most amazing thing. And because it's a rough and ready church, they get a great big loaf of bread. You know, in New York, at this high Anglican one, they had very delicate wafers on gold plates, and it was all carefully swept so no crumbs were lost. At our church, it's a great big loaf of bread, and we break off hunks, and there's crumbs all over the ground. We're allowed to bring the dogs in, so the dogs eat the crumbs. And when I first saw that, I nearly fainted because I had this high Anglican past, but now I've got used to it. But I had to take my bread and put it in my pocket because I couldn't swallow it, and it was so odd. It was a little bit of a ramble there. I'm thinking of Lynette. But the meaning of life is loving your neighbour. It's as simple as that, isn't it? Yeah. I promise to be briefer if you ask me another one. Thank you. I always like it at the back because the more I move, the better. Can you keep waving because I've lost you?
In your journey, did you do any actual making in the arts?
So the question is, did I actually make anything? I might stay here so I can get more questions. At my school, a downside was, in the era that I was there, not now, if you were brainy, you did Latin, and if you weren't so good, you did arts. Isn't that dreadful? So I have had no formal training, and I feel very inadequate. But my definition of the arts brings in creativity of community. I mean, I know I've talked a lot tonight because you asked me to, but I normally interview people on a panel and get questions from the floor. So my creativity is expressed through getting people to talk about the trauma that I've been through and to try and fix it. And I've tried to bring some humour and entertainment tonight. Have I achieved it? I mean, there's nothing darker than head and neck cancer in front of a widow. Give me a break, guys. And a son, thank God he can dance. So I guess I like to think my creativity, my arts, is the capacity to talk about terribly difficult things in a way that people can cope with. It's the best I can do with that question. Give me another one. Make them harder. I've done the meaning of life.
I'm just wondering.
I'll hold it because I know how to do it. It's all right.
Okay. I'm just wondering, had you not kept your voice during that period of illness, and what your mind was thinking about how your life would go forward, being a highly creative person?
Look, thank you for that question because it's really good. And if there's anyone else who's had cancer who wants to answer this question about loss, such a good question. I can't tell you how many people have said to me, oh, it must have been so hard for you, thinking you'd lose your voice when you use it for a living. And I don't know if I'm deluding myself. I don't think so. I couldn't give a bugger. All I wanted to do was live. I desperately wanted to live. I remember that first thing I said to him was, if you need to take it, take it. And I really mean that. I already knew what I was going to do. I've always loved driving big things. I have a heavy vehicle driver's licence. And seriously, I do. And I love elderly people, and I'm kind. And so I thought I would become a community, it's like community transport driver. And I knew I'd be able to use an iPad or whatever to communicate. I didn't actually know that at that stage. I was writing on bits of paper, but my stepdaughter, I call her my daughter, was a medical student at that time, and she came and visited from Melbourne and saw me and Melissa. Melissa claimed I could interrupt her with a pen and a piece of paper. And Amelia said, oh, that's way too slow. There's got to be an app for this. And within literally a minute, she found an app that turns an iPad into like a blackboard that you can draw on with a rubber pen. We started with a finger on a rubber pen, you just press a button. It was so much quicker. So I went straight back to speech pathology at St Vincent's, and they said, oh, this is fantastic. So they hadn't seen it. So there's why you've got to innovate. And young people are so much more creative. So I thought I'd become a bus driver. All I wanted to be was alive. I'm sorry to say that, Cara, because some of us don't make it. But, I was scared stiff that I would die. I had no courage whatsoever. I think we've got time for one more question or comment. Anyone want another one? So can I just come to you because I love amplification. Can you wave wherever you are? Here, you take it.
I just said, how about music? Can you sing?
Oh, gee. I just feel just a little bit emotional. I had a very nice singing voice. You know, not a proper, to perform. I had performed with it, but I shouldn't have, because I was on television for 5 years in a show where there was music, but Good News Week. But what cancer did, it took away my voice completely. And I can honestly say, I know this might sound totally bizarre, I must sound like a religious fanatic to you. Is it because I'm in the old Brethren Hall and they're speaking to me? But I'm not. Normally it's a very private thing, but I'm not private about it when I'm talking about Alan, because that's how we knew each other. We did things in the choir together, and the second last time I saw him, we sang round a piano. We sang the Te Deum. Is anyone old enough to remember that? It's like a summary of the Christian faith, and he loved it like I did, didn't he? It was a place of peace for us. But anyway, I lost the voice completely, and I worked very, very hard with a speech pathologist for a couple of years to get my voice back. It was a very long process to get it back, and I haven't got the full register. And one of the hardest times for me, sitting in that church, I couldn't sing the hymns. And even now, my voice is deeper than it used to be. So it's a very tender and sensitive question for me, because that's one of the things that cancer took from me, was the capacity for communal singing, which was a great joy. But who gives a damn? I'm alive. Well, look, guys, I've tried. So thank you so much for coming out on a winter's night, and I'll hand back to Ron. And thank you to David.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. For somebody who says, I haven't got my full register back, I think, Julie, you're not being very self-aware. You have the full register of communication skills, passion, enthusiasm, and the meaning of life, the fact that there's joy in interaction with other people. To have the capacity to speak so carefully that none of us are disturbed unduly about things that are so private, so fearful for most of us, I think is incredible. The fact that you're doing this educational work for the good of all people is just amazing. So many people would just say, I've been there, I've been through it, let's get back to the caviar. And you're giving everyone some of your caviar. So congratulations. Your talk was wonderful. We all enjoyed it. And I think you're doing an amazing job. So thank you for being with us.